So, hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Sunday Speaks. I, as always, am Cheyenne Severin, and today I'm here with.
Brian Cellary.
So, before we begin and get into today's topic, Brian, do you want to just tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Brian Cellary. I'm the CEO and founder of Valley Spring Recovery Center. We are a local drug and alcohol treatment facility located in Norwood, New Jersey. And I'm also a member of Alcoholics Anonymous Alumni in Recovery. And most importantly, last May I celebrated 13 years in recovery this past May, and definitely one of the biggest accomplishments I've ever had in my life. So very happy to be here. Love what Alumni in Recovery does, and happy to speak on today's topic.
Thank you for being here. Congratulations.
Awesome. Thank you.
So, the legalization of marijuana. Um,
Big topic.
Big topic. There are people on every single side of the debate about whether or not marijuana should be legal, and now that it's becoming more and more prevalent. What do you have to say, just like about any background information you know about the topic of the legalization of marijuana?
Yeah, I mean, I believe I'm a subject matter expert from all the marijuana I smoked as a child. I definitely think that kind of was a gateway into some harder drugs, which is something that I'll touch on with the youth. But, I remember growing up, marijuana was pretty regularly available. We would, smoke it pretty much every day after school, and it just became a regular routine for us. And then over time, it wasn't enough, and we were always looking for that next high, or if we couldn't find anything, we started going to some other drugs. So I could definitely see the old school mentality that marijuana can be a gateway drug, but I also think, the way we've scheduled it as a country as a Schedule One narcotic, where, that's in the same realm of heroin and cocaine. I think this law is good for the country and a couple different reasons. I think it really will reduce drug related crimes, and also keep a lot of people out of jail who shouldn't have been there to begin with. Like, marijuana never should have been a scheduled one. You ask any subject matter expert, it's apples and oranges when you're comparing marijuana and heroin. And my only question to our legislators are, what are they going to do with those tax savings of not putting those people in jail and in prison? Like, where are those tax dollars going to go? And, if I were to vote on something or suggest something, they should be going to drug and alcohol treatment facilities, as well as mental health facilities, which, marijuana can lead to mental health problems as well as alcohol and drug problems. So, I have a lot to talk about. I think I have my personal view, my professional view, and then what Alumni in Recovery is all about is spreading the message, kind of to our youth, and, the messaging to the youth.
Before we get into any of those deeper perspectives, I would just like to ask, how do you think, as a whole, generally, marijuana affects addiction and recovery?
I think, I think it can lead to addiction pretty quickly. I also think if you smoke it at a young age, like, our brain is still developing pretty much until the age of 25, right? So if you are smoking marijuana as a youth all the way through your early 20s, that can stop the development of some parts of your brain. And, as far as treatment goes, at the end of the day, I've come a long way with harm reduction, right? Harm reduction is essentially putting a strategy together to deal with whatever substance you're using, and to come up with a strategy to come off it or reduce the chances of going to higher drugs, right? And at the beginning of my recovery, if you use Suboxone, if you use marijuana, I would say you're not sober, right? But at the end of the day, I've lost way too many people due to overdoses and suicides, that if your doctor and your physician or your treatment provider says that marijuana can reduce your chances of overdoses, I'm all for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what some people say. I've heard the argument where it's like, if alcohol is legal, then marijuana should be too. I don't know how you feel about that, but it was just an interesting
I
perspective that I heard.
No, I think it's a great perspective, and the difference between alcohol and marijuana, when you look at it from an insurance authorization part or the ASAM criteria, which is how how we in the treatment industry regulate what level of care people are going to be in. Alcohol, you can have a seizure and die. You can have serious DTs. There's a lot of withdrawal symptoms that are associated with alcohol, which is essentially a benzodiazepine. But with marijuana, there's really no proven withdrawal symptoms. So I do think they should be classified as the same, but I think they're two completely different drugs and should have two completely different mindsets to them.
So, going back for a minute to those deeper perspectives that you had mentioned earlier, how do you feel about this topic from a professional perspective?
From a professional perspective, at Valley Spring, we are a harm reduction center. So we do have some patients who do come in and they have consulted a physician prior to admitting into our facility. They were on heroin or they had underlying mental health, they had anxiety, and they use marijuana at night to go to sleep, or they use it in the morning to kind of get their day started. And, we help support them in that. But we also try to put together a plan and educate them on what marijuana is doing to them and how it could lead them back to other things. So professionally, I am all for it. I think it is a great drug when it comes to reducing anxiety, helping regulate sleep patterns. And, but at the same time, if you have certain mental health disorders that can really increase the paranoia. This is why you should always consult with a doctor and a trained professional before going and buying marijuana, one of these shops, or, getting your card.
Have you seen any relapses as a result of marijuana use?
We have, yes. If you come in, I would say 95% of our patients come in seeking abstinence-based treatment. And then there are some patients, if they do choose that and they do start smoking marijuana, that is considered a relapse. And, usually that does lead to alcohol or whatever their drug of choice was prior.
Okay. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, but how do you feel from a personal perspective?
From a personal perspective, I've been in recovery, like I was saying. I was blessed with the opportunity to get sober May 27, 2011, and I have abstained from all substances, alcohol, prescriptions, marijuana, and I would never go back to smoking marijuana. That's just not who I am. I love my life. I love waking up in the morning and being able to go to the gym or go on a hike. And, I would not personally ever go back to marijuana, but any of my friends who have been in long-term recovery and did have, underlying mental health disorders, instead of going to prescriptions, they're now going to marijuana, and actually it's, helping them out a lot. And, I think marijuana is one of the oldest drugs that we have in this world. It's been around for, thousands of years for a reason, for medicinal use. And I would rather see my friends try marijuana first before prescription drugs, whatever that may be. If that helps them, I think that's a big win.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think this impacts our youth, like from that perspective?
So I think it gives our youth the perception of alcohol, right? Where marijuana has always been, use marijuana, it's a bad thing, right? You use marijuana, you could go to jail. You have all these sets of consequences. But when you just blanket legalize it, yes, there are age restrictions on alcohol, but they start to look at it like marijuana, right? And they have easier access to it. And that's my real concern, is how are you going to control them getting access to it as an underage, and what is the education in our school systems going to be around marijuana, even though it is legalized now, and the stigma is going to be completely different around marijuana. How are we going to educate the youth as a whole to be able to, show them that you still do have these real consequences from marijuana, even though it is legalized? We do need to, still educate our youth on, essentially the what can happen with long-term use, and it is still a gateway. I know for myself, there's a million different reasons why I ended up addicted to opiates. But I do believe marijuana was one of them. I do believe it is still a gateway drug. But I think we just need to do a really good job of educating our youth on what can happen down the road.
Hmm. So, something that's been on the rise is synthetic marijuana. How much do you know about that?
I know a lot about synthetic marijuana. We have patients all the time who come into our facility and they test positive for one thing, and we confront them about it. And we say, hey, when was the last time you used fentanyl or this synthetic or whatever it may be? And they're shocked to see that that's in their system. The problem with the synthetics are, we did a speaking engagement last Monday at Park Ridge, and the Drug Enforcement Agency agent was there. This was a part of Alumni in Recovery. And he was talking about these synthetic marijuanas. He was talking about where they come in from China into Mexico into the States, and they're changed hands so many different times that you really have no idea what you're smoking. I was in Manhattan this weekend, and yeah, I don't know what drugs a lot of these people were on, but they almost look like zombies. And synthetic marijuana, there's so many different chemicals that are in that you really don't know what you're smoking, but that could be sold at a vape shop or a smoke shop. And, it's pretty easy to get your hands on, and let alone the way, these cartels and some of these dealers are targeting kids. It's all through social media. It's through Snapchat. They're really, really, really good at marketing and branding their products to be able to get to them, but you have no idea what you're using when you ingest something that's synthetic.
So, do you think synthetic marijuana has the potential to be more dangerous than your typical marijuana?
I do. Unless you're getting marijuana, you're consulting with your physician, you're buying it from a legitimate shop, I think you're always at risk. Our great prosecutor in Bergen County, he said that 98% of the drug seizures that they have in the county have fentanyl in it now. That's including marijuana. If you buy something off the streets, you have no idea what you're ingesting. And, it goes back to our patients. And when we drug test, they test positive for fentanyl in marijuana where they never even knew that they were using fentanyl. They're shocked, and it does scare them to a point, but unless you're being prescribed and consulted by your doctor, you're getting it from a legitimate shop, like, you're at risk to, really ingest something that you have no idea what you're ingesting.
Do you see fentanyl pop up a lot in your drug tests?
All the time. I would say 75 to 80% of our patients who are on opiates, fentanyl does come up. That's including people who just claim that they were using prescription pills. The prescription pills, if you put them side by side, something that's prescribed by a pharmacy versus something that is, cooked up in a lab in Mexico by one of the cartels, they look literally identical. You can't tell the difference of them. And there's fentanyl in all those, pills.
How big of a problem is that, do you think? Like, how often, when did that start becoming a real big issue for you guys, finding that fentanyl popping up more and more?
I would say over the last 2.5, 3 years, I think it's really swept across the country really quickly, similar to kind of the way that new synthetic drug crank is. I saw it a little bit down in Philadelphia. Now we're seeing a little bit in the New York area, but it's amazing how these drugs sweep across the country. They come in through Mexico, usually on the West Coast, go to the Midwest, and then eventually end up in the Northeast. It's very similar to the way meth came across the country 10, 15 years ago and just swept across and became an epidemic as it is.
So I actually haven't heard of crank. What is that?
Crank is just another synthetic that people can smoke, snort, or I think you can you can do it through IV as well. But it's a drug that we're just learning about too. But essentially, it's called the zombie drug, where it literally eats away at your skin, and people are just standing up straight, almost like they're asleep. It's pretty scary.
Oh, the necrosis?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, then
yeah,
I've heard of it. That's
yeah,
scary. That's scary.
yep.
What do you think is one of the biggest problems that you guys are facing right now as like an organization?
Well, in relating to the legalization of marijuana is probably working with the insurance companies, working with other providers, other facilities, and really putting together different protocols, right? Because this has always been an illegal drug for so long that now it's reclassified from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3. So it's, how are we going to treat the influx of patients that are not now, but 2, 3 years now, that are going to be building up dependencies? Their life centers around marijuana. Like, what does our harm reduction approach look like to that? And it's just a lot of collaboration and thought leadership with so many great minds that we have in our industry.
Hmm. Has that been easier over time, or is it something you're still having a lot of difficulty with?
I think it's gotten a lot easier over time. I mean, we have to be on top of the ever changing legislation and the laws. I think literally the same day Biden announced that he was reclassifying the drug, we had our psychiatrist, Dr. Michael, and our clinical director, Christy Ash, put out an article and essentially do an interview with our team to co-author an article about just their interpretation of the legalization of marijuana and where it is. And there's a very similar thought process between both of them. Politically, it's a huge win because it keeps people out of jail. It helps people have access to this drug a little bit more who actually need it. But they both agree, like, you have to consult with your physician to see if that's a good medical, protocol for you.
Hmm. So we are almost out of time. We have about a minute left. Is there anything that you would like to say before we end off today?
I would say from a recovery standpoint, if your recovery is working the way it is and you're happy with your recovery and you don't have marijuana in it, really consider staying in that abstinence-based mindset, because you never know when you ingest something into your body what it's going to do to you long term. For me, and this is just my personal opinion, I think if you lived an abstinence-based lifestyle, just because a law has changed or something has changed, your mindset should not change. You should really stick with what got you to the point of being recovered, and just continue down that field.
Thank you for coming on today, Brian.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cheyenne.
Yeah, have a nice day.
All right, you too. Bye.